GTA 5 is the most iconic game in history, from putting cheat codes on a wrinkly piece of paper all the way to today's griefers in GTA 5 Online. However, when I was a kid, I always had one burning question. What if you just decided to live a completely normal life in this universe? And that's where Bob comes in. Bob is one of the very many NPCs scattered around the entire map. And today, his story will take center stage as over the next 30 days, he will be attempting to live a completely normal, realistic life. From working a normal job, to hard labor, and whatever this is. However, on day 30, Bob needs to reach $20 million to purchase his dream house, the Playboy Mansion. Now, Bob didn't always need to get a normal job in order to generate money. At one point, he was considered the richest man in Los Santos. Bob's story will start with one of the biggest yacht parties in the entire state, with hundreds of famous rich people all getting together for someone's special birthday. And of course, that special person was none other than this man right here, meet Bob. Bob basically hired a bunch of celebrities to his party with his dad's money. However, Bob would soon make one of the biggest mistakes of his life. Bob is woken up in the middle of nowhere. At least that's what it feels like for him. No cars, no mansions, nothing around him. Bob lost his wallet, but thankfully there was a close bank, the only bank for hundreds of miles, where he could check his account. As he walked into the bank, he could feel the judgment of people staring at him. Bob felt really out of his comfort zone. But that didn't matter, because Bob would soon be safe at home in his beautiful mansion, until he checked his bank account. $0. This was a new feeling for Bob. He was completely broke and he felt humiliated. To make matters even worse, he checked his phone and saw that he went viral for jumping and hitting his head. This was humiliating. So from that moment, Bob swore that he would do whatever it takes to get back to the top. He would do it by purchasing the single most expensive real estate property in the entire state, the Playboy Mansion. So Bob got a job getting fish bait. In fact, Bob had never really done anything with his hands when it came to working before. He mostly just collected checks and decided to party. He returned to the store that he got a small job from, and he got a whopping $20. Was it $20 million for his Playboy Mansion? No, but it was just the right amount to purchase a place to sleep for the night. But it was going to be a very far walk, as his destination of luxury for the night was the Loggers Motel. Bob checked in, spending his only money that he had for a single night. He could smell the cider from the wood around him. However, as he got closer to the motel room, he started to smell mold and cigarettes. When he got into the room, he couldn't believe it. A bunch of cigarette butts, a broken TV, a disgusting shower, and what looked like a stain on one of his pillows. It was clear that this was not the life Bob was used to living, so he needed to suck it up and think of more ways to earn money, because he needed to get back to the city. Day 3 approached, and with his mindset of getting back to the city, Bob started looking around for work, and he happened to run into 2 firefighters and asked them if he could help him out. These men seemed to take pity on Bob and said that they would pay him if he washed the fire truck. So Bob started right away. Did he like doing this? Of course not. The smell of cleaning chemicals on his hand was gross, not to mention it burnt a little. At the end of that job, he got $50. Was it enough to get back to the city? No, but he needed at least $150 so he could at least call a cab. So Bob picked up a farming job. This was the first time Bob actually had a small amount of understanding for the working class people. The farm paid Bob exactly $100 for the work he put in, so Bob was able to call a cab, and just like that, he was off to the city. As Bob looked at the city lights, he had no idea what he was in store for.
Welcome, fellow travelers, to Los Santos, a city bursting with diversity and more fast food options than you could ever need. However, be aware that crime is up by 3% this year. How great! Nonetheless, we wish you an amazing visit. Enjoy your stay.
Bob decided to apply for a job. This was the first time he'd ever done so, but he felt confident that some job would hopefully need him. As he walked closer to the front desk, Bob's palms started to get a little sweaty. He wasn't sure if he was going to get the job. But he did. Bob got his first job, and that job was working at a gas station. It was in a not so good part of town. Bob spent about 3 days at this job, and on day 8, he kind of started getting distracted on other things, such as his phone. Because Bob decided to fall back into his own ignorant habits, he got fired. However, he did get some money for the days he did work, about $1,000. Was this enough to get that Playboy Mansion and prove everyone wrong? No, not even close. In a shot of desperation, Bob decided to do something interesting. He joined a gang.
Yeah, all this money on me. Whoa. Yeah.
On day 9, Bob had his first task with the gang. It was simple. Get a bunch of gang members and meet up in an abandoned alley. So Bob borrowed a car and drove over to this alley. However, as Bob got closer to this alley, he soon realized that he probably wasn't prepared for what he was in store for. You see, Bob was not much of a fighter, but he needed to be here. He started to think about all his anger, all the issues that had happened up until now, and he took them out on these rival gang members. Wow, Bob was actually a pretty good fighter. Well, it's day 10. Now that Bob is out of the hospital, he has very little, if not any money now. He knew he needed to do something in order to protect himself. Bob decided to buy a gun. However, Bob had never shot a gun before, and when he did, yeah, Bob was not much of a fan. This was a very low point for good old Bob. And to make matters even worse, he had to get a job at good old McDonald's. I don't think Bob is loving it. Bob hated this job even more than his gas station job. The smell of fries and burgers all day made Bob nauseous. And just when things couldn't get worse, McDonald's was under attack. Bob's gang activities now had him as a target, and with not much time to think, Bob took out his gun and started to run, quickly jumping over a fence with bullets hitting him in the arm. A rival gang member was closing in on killing Bob until Bob took his first shots. It was official. Bob just killed a person. But not just one person, also a second. As Bob ran away, he felt a strong surge of fear and guilt go through his body at the same time. He couldn't go to the cops as he was associated with gangs. It felt like Bob had nobody in his life until he saw someone in the far distance. His name was Casey, the buffest guy in Los Santos. Casey actually saw Bob and saw that he was hurt and invited him over to his house. Surprisingly enough, Casey lived right on the beach. However, when Bob came in, he noticed how much Casey was really into lifting weights. With an unusual amount of weights in the middle of his living room, Bob started to vent a lot to Casey, telling him his entire life story and his goal for getting the Playboy Mansion. When he told Casey how he lost everything, Casey had some really nice words to say.
Not cool! Not cool!
Something about Casey made Bob happy, and Casey and Bob randomly just decided to have the time of their lives. Bob took Casey to all the fun party places in Los Santos that he used to go to, where people would let loose and dance and forget about the harsh reality of life. And for the first time, Bob could actually appreciate these parties, as he felt like he had a real friend that wasn't just with him for his money. Him and Casey were just being friends, goofing around, acting like goofballs, and doing some very questionable things. Yeah, you would think Bob would have learned from jumping off of high places after the last time.
Not cool!
Well, Bob and Casey had their fun, but Bob still needed to make money for his house and prove everyone wrong. All that partying made Bob lose all of his money. And not just that, but they spent 5 days partying as well. So Casey, knowing the struggle Bob was going through, took him to his garage, and Bob couldn't believe his eyes. Casey was just holding on to this crazy supercar, and Casey even recommended to Bob to do street races to earn some quick cash. As Bob felt the engine rumble through his body like old times, he felt more confident than ever. The night of day 15 approached, and Bob entered into a local street race with a couple of cars that stood no chance against him and Casey. As soon as they said go, Bob was off and put his foot hard on the gas. And let me just tell you, Bob wasn't just good at street racing, he was terrible. He ended up crashing Casey's car into a palm tree, but Casey was just happy that Bob was okay. Now things started to get interesting, as Bob wanted to pull off a life of crime. However, Casey really wasn't on board. It took 5 days for Bob to finally convince him to do a small-time robbery at a dispensary. And if you don't know what a dispensary is, you're too young for this video and it's past your bedtime. Either way, this store held millions of dollars of goods. So, what could go wrong? Bob came in guns blazing on day 20. The worker ultimately led Bob to the back room. Bob grabbed the cash from the register. Then he popped over and started drilling at the safe, where more goods were. And bags of green bricks, worth millions of dollars, were stuffed into a duffel bag. Then the hard part came. The cops showed up. Acting fast, Bob and Casey headed out the back door, into their getaway truck, where they were off. A sense of adrenaline, fear, excitement was surging through Bob's body like never before. Even the news caught on to this big heist.
Big store robbery happening right now. Sources tell me both men have subscribed to JNO'S WRLD.
And to get away, Bob was 2 steps ahead. Well, the heist was a success for Bob and Casey, and now Bob has $1 million. Now he is much closer to his house. One more big score could get him to the finish line. In the meantime, there was only one thing Bob and Casey needed to do. Destroy the evidence. Now Bob and Casey were fully in this life of crime now, and they needed to pull off one more heist to reach their final goal, but they needed to leave Los Santos. A bank is located in Londonford, all the way in the Midwest of a spot called North Yankton, and Bob and Casey spent multiple days scoping out this place and planning their robbery. Rumor has it this bank holds over $30 million, as some of the biggest investors in the world hold their money here. And the plan is very simple. The investors keep a chopper here by the graveyard for whatever reason, and Casey and Bob will use this as a getaway vehicle. Their plan is to head in guns blazing, as the cops have a slow response time out here due to the harsh weather. Once Bob and Casey break into the vault, they will collect all the money in gold that they can get their hands on. This should be easy, but now it's time for Bob and Casey to execute this plan.
La mierda, man. You're a...
Bob couldn't believe all the gold he was grabbing. This was looking very promising. Bob watched as his only friend in the world got hit with multiple bullets and not get up, and in that moment he reflected on every memory he had made with Casey. Casey was the first person who cared about Bob for who Bob truly was, but now Bob needs to finish the job for Casey. On day 30, Bob had done it. He reached his goal of $20 million and more, and purchased his dream home. As he walked into the house for the first time, it was everything he expected and more. So I guess the question is, can you live as a normal person in GTA 5? Well, the short answer is, of course not. But the memories that you make along the way with people with this masterpiece of a game are worth a lifetime.